Hello, I hope you're all doing well. This week I'll be talking about Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey. He was a Renaissance poet, and he was an important poet because he actually brought many new things into English literature. He was a close friend of Sir Thomas Wyatt. Sir Thomas Wyatt was our previous week's poet, if you remember that. And let's begin talking about him. Okay, so we have 4 poems. The Soothe season, love that doth reign and live within my thought. Alas, so all things now do hold their peace, and so cruel prison, how could betide? So I'll be probably repeating this during my presentation, but let me start by saying that these are not the actual titles of the poems. These titles are given by the editors because these are just the first lines of these sonnets. Okay, so on the right side we have a painting of Earl of Surrey, Henry Howard. So he was born, of course, in England, and he was a member of the nobility. He was born in 1517, and both sides of his family actually were noble people, and that was something dangerous for him because he was like a contender for the throne. So he was in Henry VIII's court, but both his mother's side and his father's side actually belonged to nobility, and he descended from kings. His great ancestors actually on both sides of the family were actually kings, so it was a dangerous place for him. He had 2 cousins. He had 2 famous cousins. One of them is Anne Boleyn, and the other one is Catherine Howard, and they were both married to Henry VIII. So he began writing poetry when he was imprisoned. So why was he imprisoned? Because he was an angry man all the time. I mean, he fought a lot. One time he struck a courtier, he beat down a courtier, and he was sent to prison. And one of the poems that we will read today actually are written about that topic. So yeah, in 1537 he was imprisoned in Windsor Castle. So Windsor Castle was also the place where he grew up. So he was imprisoned in the place where he grew up. So he was also in the service of the king, and as you know, during that time England also had some lands in Europe, in France actually. So parts of France actually belonged to England, and there were some wars going on with the French king. There were some wars going on between the French king and the English king, Henry VIII. So Earl of Surrey, Henry Howard, was actually a commander in the armies of Henry VIII. Yeah, he was beheaded in 1546 actually, because like I said, he was an angry man. He fought a lot. He caused many problems, and also as I have said, he had descended from a line of kings. So therefore, the court of Henry VIII was a dangerous place for him. So in 1548, 47, he was beheaded. So let's talk about his literary career a little bit. On the right side, you see an example of iambic pentameter. So prior to Henry Howard, so let's say that first he translated 2 of the books of the Aeneid. So Aeneid is an epic by the Roman poet Virgil, and it talks about the Trojan War, and it's about the foundation of Rome. It's about the founding of it's about how the Roman Republic was founded. So in this translation, Surrey tries something new, which is that he uses blank verse. So what is blank verse? Blank verse is unrhymed lines of iambic pentameter, or lines of 10 syllables alternating between unaccented and accented syllables. So that's a lot to digest in a moment. So look at the right side. So that's an example of iambic pentameter. So it's a famous sonnet from Shakespeare. So, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. So you see, on letter, for example, shall in the first line, shall is an unaccented syllable, but I is an accented syllable. Come is an unaccented syllable. Pair is an accent. So it's about where you stress, where you put the stress when you are speaking those words, actually. So, and prior to Henry Howard, British English poets usually chose to write their poems with rhymes, but he developed blank verse, unrhymed lines of iambic pentameter. Another of Surrey's great innovations was the development of the English sonnet. So Shakespearean, or in other words, Shakespearean sonnet. So Shakespeare, of course, came after Henry Howard, but people don't know this type of sonnet as the as Howard sonnet, but instead they call it the Shakespearean sonnet. So normally, I mean, before Henry Howard, the sonnet actually is a 14-line poem popularized by Petrarch. I'm sure you remember Petrarch. He was an Italian poet. Petrarch, and it was introduced into England by Surrey, and a poet with him who is frequently linked, Sir Thomas Wyatt. So there's a difference between them. Sir Thomas Wyatt actually wanted to imitate Petrarch, his style and his form, but Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, actually wanted to be original. So he tried something else, and his trial, actually, what he tried to do with the sonnet, the innovations that he brought, actually became to be called as the English sonnet or Shakespearean sonnet. So normally a sonnet or the sonnet type that Sir Thomas Wyatt introduced to England consists of two parts, an octave and the sestet. An octave is 8 lines and the sestet is 6 lines. When you add 8 and 6, you get 14. So there are 14 lines in all sonnets. So in the octave, in the first 8 lines, the poet introduces a problem, and in the sestet, he introduces a solution to this problem. But Henry Howard did something else. The form that Surrey developed, by contrast, had 3 4-line units known as quatrains. So there are 3 quatrains, which make 12 lines. And the concluding 2 lines, the couplet, and that's called the couplet, 2 lines is called couplet. So when you add 3 quatrains, which is 12 lines, with 2 lines, the couplet, you get 14 lines again. In this type of sonnet, the poet poses a problem in the 3 quatrains, with each quatrain dealing with a separate, though related aspect of the problem. For example, he might, in the first quatrain, the speaker might talk about the beauty of the woman that he is in love with. And in the second quatrain, again, he develops on his own feelings towards her. And in the third quatrain, he might talk about another part of the same problem. And in the last 2 lines, in the couplet part, he might try to solve this problem. Okay, so think of these quatrains or octaves and sestets as paragraphs in a prose. Okay. Okay, and finally, in addition to developing blank verse and the English sonnet, Surrey was also among the earliest English poets to struggle with smooth metrical patterns in his lines. So before Surrey, before he introduced his own version of the sonnet, English poets usually did not care about how many syllables that their lines had. Okay, so they didn't care about how many syllables that their lines had. But Surrey did something different. Surrey wrote with he used 10 syllables in each line. So as I've said, for example, before Henry Howard, an English sonneteer an English poet might use, I don't know, 14 syllables in the first line, and then 8 syllables in the second line, 10 syllables in the third line, and 14 syllables in the fourth line. But Henry Howard did something else. Henry Howard used a consistent number of syllables, sorry, and that number was 10. 10 syllables in each line. And he always used iambic pentameter. So penta means 5. Okay, so one accented and one unaccented syllable make up number two syllables, and 2 syllables 5 times repeated in a pentameter, 5 times meter, makes up 10. So there are 10 groups of syllables in each in iambic pentameter. That's also what he did new in English literature. Okay, so now we can talk about his poems. The soothe season. The soothe season that bud and bloom forth brings, with green hath clad the hill and eke the vale. The nightingale with feathers new she sings, the turtle to her mate hath told her tale. All right, so we can actually divide this poem into 3 quatrains and 1 couplet. So a quatrain is 4 lines, like here, and that's the second quatrain. And this one is the third one, this part here, and this is the couplet. So this is the couplet part. Quatrain is 4 lines. Why do we do that? Because it's possible to think of these divisions like paragraphs that you would normally find in a in prose, in an essay, for example, because each of these quatrains and this couplet contain a unified single idea. So the soothe season that bud and bloom forth brings, with green hath clad the hill and eke the vale. So here we can see that the season has changed. So the soothe, you can check the side notes and footnotes in the text when we are reading. I'm not going to talk about all of them. So the soothe season, the sweet season that bud and bloom forth brings. So which season is that? That's the spring or summer. How do we know that? Because it says the bud and bloom. I mean, the things that are about the spring have appeared right now. So the new flowers, for example, greenery has appeared. One thing to be aware of at this point is that, so like I said, we are not sure if this is spring or summer, because in line 5 we see that he says, Earl of Surrey says, summer is come. But we normally associate the new bud and the appearance of bud and bloom, or the things like these, with spring. But for the English people, during that time in English poetry, summer was usually considered as a better season than spring, because of the climate in England. I mean, it's usually cold in England. England has a colder climate. So spring is still a cold season for the English people. That's why we can say that this is the summer that Earl of Surrey or Henry Howard is talking about. The soothe season that bud and bloom for springs with green had clad the hill and eke the vale. So everywhere is green. The hills and the vales are green now, and overall everywhere flowers are appearing. The nightingale with feathers new she sings. So there is actually here an inverted sentence structure. New feathers, we should say. We can just paraphrase it into new feathers. The nightingale, the bird, has new feathers and she sings. And the turtle to her mate, or as you can see in the side note, the turtle dove to her mate. So the turtle here is not this land animal. Actually, don't think about turtles or tortoises, but just think about a bird, dove. Okay, think about a pigeon. Actually, turtle dove to her mate had told her tale. So the animals are now reappearing. The summer is come, for every spray now springs. The hearth had hung his old hat on the pail. The buck in brake his winter coat he flings. The fishes float with new repaired scale. So the summer is come, apparently, and spray here actually refers to the newly appearing leaves on the trees or flowers, new leaves. Every spray, every new branch is appearing now. The heart is heart is deer. I mean the animal deer. The heart had hung his old head on the pail. So the pail is fence. So what to make of this sentence or this line? So it possibly means that the hunters have begun. So the deers have begun reappearing, and because it's warmer now, and the hunters have started their hunts. The hunters are going on hunting, and they have hunted these animals, these deers, these harts, and they are taking these animals as their trophies, and they are putting their heads, they are putting the heads of the deers onto the fences to show, maybe to show the others that they have succeeded in hunting. The buck in brake. Buck is also buck is a female deer. The buck in brake his winter coat he flings. So the animals are changing their the animals are shedding their long feathers because it's warmer now. The fishes float with new repaired scale. So the scales, fish have scales, and they have renewed their scales because the season has changed. It's warmer again. So you will notice that there is a sign here on top of the letter E. There's a diacritical sign. And whenever you see this in poetry, especially in Renaissance poetry, you should know that you don't read this word as you are usually used to. You don't read this word as repaired, but you read it as repaired. Okay, so that's because the poet tries to keep the meter in the poem, iambic pentameter, especially. I mean, in this case, in the case of this poem, the fishes float with new repaired scale. So he tries to fit the rhythm, the musicality, the rhythm, the meter of this line with all the rest of the poem. So let's get on to the third quatrain. The adder, all her slough, away she slinks. The swift swallow pursued the flies small. The bee's a bee, her honey now she minks. Winter is worn, that was the flower's bale. Okay, adder is a kind of snake, a poisonous snake. And because again, the same theme reappears here as well. So animals are adapting to the new season. So the adder, or this snake is casting off its skin. It's changing its skin. The swift swallow pursued the flies small. So the bee is a bee. Her honey now she mings. Again, all the animals are more lively, more alive. We can see that there is so much activity going on right now in nature. Winter is warm, that was the flowers' bale. So this evil winter is over finally, and the flowers have a chance, have an opportunity to appear. And thus, okay, now we are at the solution part, or the main idea, let's say, the main idea of this sonnet. And thus, I see among these pleasant things, each care decays, and yet my sorrow springs. So he, at this point in the poem, until this point, the poet has actually created a very positive kind of imagery. I mean, he mentioned animals reappearing in nature, getting ready for the warm season. I mean, for example, turtle is, the turtle doe. I mean, the doe is has started speaking to its mate, and every animal and everything in nature is lively, but except Earl of Surrey, except Henry Howard. Okay, because wherever he looks, he sees this animals going on about their business happily, but this much happiness actually reminds him of his sorrows. We don't, but do we know what kind of the reason for his sadness? Well, no. But the thing is, maybe he's trying to tell us that whenever we are around people or things that look so happy, I mean, it's easier for us to remember that we are sad. All right, so this was the soothe season, and this sonnet is one of the first poems, one of the first English poems. One of the first English sonnets. All right. Our second sonnet is love that doth reign and live within my thought. So this sonnet is, in fact, I think it's going to seem very familiar to you, because I think you will remember it. I mean, you are going to remember the same topic from an earlier poet that we discussed, Sir Thomas Wyatt, and his sonnet, "The long love that in my thought doth harbor," is actually, it has the same content, but here Earl of Surrey has a different wording for the same topic. That's because they both are, I mean, both Henry Howard's love that doth reign and live within my thought, and Sir Thomas Wyatt's "The long love that in my thought doth harbor" are actually translations of Petrarch's Rima 140. Okay, so the original poem is actually in Italian, in the Italian language, and Earl of Surrey and Thomas Wyatt have both kind of translated, let's say, within the confines of the sonnet, the same the same Italian sonnet into English. All right. Love that doth reign and live within my thought, and build his seat within my captive breast, clad in the arms, wherein with me he fought, oft in my face he doth his banner rest. Okay, so what do we have here? Again, as with Sir Thomas Wyatt's sonnet, here we have the very same thing actually. So our speaker is in love, but his love lives in his thoughts only. So nobody knows about this love except him and this woman that he is in love with. Okay, so it's a love in thoughts, but this love is confined, is captive in his breast, in his heart. Here we have a poetic conceit, a poetic metaphor here. I mean, a poetical conceit is a metaphor which runs throughout the whole poem. Okay, so you don't find the metaphysical conceit in a single sentence, but instead this, for example, here in this poem and in Sir Thomas Wyatt's poem, the war imagery, let's say, or the banner, the war banner imagery is the metaphysical conceit, because love is likened to a banner, a war banner. So clad in the arms, wherein with me he fought. Okay, so the war imagery, the battle imagery starts here. Arms actually don't refer to our body parts, but it refers to armor and weaponry. So clad in the arms, wherein with me he fought, oft in my face he doth his banner rest. So what does he tell us here? So his love, he is in love with somebody, and this love is a captive in his heart, which means that he is unable to tell it to anybody. But this love is so intense that it's like a warrior in his heart, and this warrior sets up his banner, his war banner, his flag, war flag, on his face, on the speaker's face. So what does it mean? It means that whenever people look at the speaker's face, they can see clearly that this person is in love with someone. But she that taught me love and suffer pain, my doubtful hope and eke my hot desires, with shamefast look to shadow and refrain, her smiling grace converted straight to ires. Okay. So this, now in this quatrain, he has started talking about this woman. So the first quatrain was about the speaker himself, and the second quatrain is about the woman that he is in love with. So she has taught him, this woman has taught the speaker about love, and he has told her to suffer the pain of having to keep the love a secret. Okay, my doubtful hope and eke, and also my hot desire, with shamefast look to shadow and refrain, her smiling grace converted straight to ire. So what he's saying here is that whenever the speaker tries to talk about his love, or whenever the speaker is, for example, excited, people begin to suspect, let's say, they begin to suspect that this person is in love with this woman. But this makes her ashamed, and this makes her angry, Irish, okay? So her smiling grace, so she smiles very gracefully, very beautifully, very nobly. But then, whenever he begins to show signs that he loves her, she gets anxious, she gets afraid for some reason, because she doesn't want this love to be known by other people. That's why her smiling, her beautiful smile turns into anger. And coward love went to the heart apace, taketh his flight where he doth lurk and plain. His purpose lost, and dare not show his face. For my Lord's guilt, thus faultless bide I pain. So again, just remember what we discussed about Sir Thomas Wyatt's poem here. So he's trying to make a decision. Should I be loyal to my woman, to this woman, or should I be loyal to myself? Should I be loyal to my love? So he is undecided about what to do. For my Lord's guilt, thus faultless bide I pain. Okay, so the solution. Yet from my Lord shall not my foot remove. Sweet is the death that taketh end by love. All right, so what do you think the conclusion is? I mean, the conclusion could mean that so the Lord actually, again, we have here another military imagery again this time. So in the end, he, in my opinion, in the end, he chooses to be loyal to this woman, and he decides to hide his love, because when you think about it, in sonnets, in Elizabethan sonnets, it's always the women who is in a superior position, and it's always the speakers in these sonnets that are subservient to the women. So again, here we see that the speaker feels that he has to suffer the pain of having to hide his love, and her wish to remain a secret actually prevails. All right, so we can talk about our next sonnet. Alas, so all things now do hold their peace. Heaven and earth disturbed in nothing. The beasts, the air, the birds, their songs do cease. The night is chair, the stars about doth bring. Calm is the sea, the waves work less and less. So am I not, whom love, alas, doth wring, bringing before my face the great increase of my desires, whereat I weep and sing. In joy and woe, as in a doubtful ease, for my sweet thoughts sometime do pleasure bring, but by and by the cause of my disease gives me a pang that inwardly doth sting. When that I think what grief it is again to live and lack the thing should rid my pain. So this sonnet is, I think you have noticed that it's similar to the first sonnet that we read. It has a similar theme, actually. So in the first sonnet, I mean, in Soothe season, we had animals and plants and nature renewing itself, or there was a positive side to nature. And here in this sonnet, again, everything is peaceful. I mean, nature is supposed to, at least, it's supposed to be a source of peace, tranquility, as Henry Howard says, that everything is in peace, and heaven and sky and earth is not disturbed in any way, and the animals, I mean the beasts means the animals, the air, the birds, their song do cease. So it's night time, because he can see here, I mean, you can see that He's talking about some constellations on the sky. The Great Bear, so the night's chair, the stars about doth bring, calm is the sea, the waves work less and less. So nature is very calm, very serene, very tranquil. And so the speaker is supposed to feel the same as well. He's supposed to feel calm as well. Okay, but is he? So am I, so am not I. So he is not calm, he is not happy. So what's the source of this, of his situation? So am not I. Whom love others doth ring. That's the problem. So he is in love. So he, and this is also an unrequited love. So he is not happy. So probably this lady doesn't answer his love. That's why he is disturbed. So he's not calm as nature. So am not I, whom love alas doth ring, bringing before my face the great increase of my desires. So again, we have the same thing as in the second sonnet that we read, and the previous sonnet. So again, love brings the desire, the great increase of his desire onto his face. So if somebody looks at his face, they will notice that he is in love and he is in discomfort because of this love. Whereat I weep and sing in joy and woe as in a doubtful ease. So he is crying and singing at the same time, and in joy and woe, and he is in joy and he is also in woe, in sadness, as in a doubtful ease. So he is in ease, or he is calm, probably because he is in such beautiful nature, scenery, but at the same time he is in woe because inside he is not really happy because of the problems, because of love problems. For my sweet thoughts. Okay, so here's the volta part. So do you remember what volta is? So the volta is a turn. Volta is an Italian term, and it means turn. So a turn of the ideas, just a sudden change of direction in the argument of the poem, in the content of the poem. So here is the volta part. For my sweet thoughts sometime do pleasure bring. So for here means because my sweet thoughts. So which thoughts are these? The thoughts of this woman that he is in love with, because his sweet thoughts sometimes bring him pleasure, but immediately, again, the cause of my disease gives me a pang that inwardly doth sting. So sometimes he feels pleasure, sometimes, because when he thinks about this woman, he sometimes feels pleasure, but immediately after that, the cause of his disease, his problem, gives him a sudden damage, a sudden wound, let's say. So we can say that, we can comment on this word maybe, disease. So you can take it as like disease, like sickness, illness. So it could be that Henry Howard is likening his problem to a disease, to a sickness, or as the footnote, or as our footnote tells us, we can say that this is, or like an here you have is, and here you have another is. So did you notice what Henry Howard is doing here? So this part is actually creating a negative. Okay, so his discomfort, this is, gives me a pang that inwardly doth sting. When that I think what grief it is again to live and lack the thing should rid my pain. So here we have the conclusion part in this couplet. When he thinks about his grief, and what kind of grief it is that? His grief is, his problem is that he has to live, he has to keep on living, and he has to lack the thing the thing that should rid him of his pain. So what is his remedy? He lacks his remedy. What's the remedy? What's the solution to his pain? What's the medicine to his pain? It's the woman. It's that woman. So, and he lacks this woman, and that's why he has to live with it. He has to live without this woman, and he has to deal with it. So that's his problem. Okay, our last poem is So Cruel Prison, How Could Betide? So betide is a strange word for us. So it's like saying, okay, let's check the footnote. It says, how could there happen to be? So how could there be such a cruel prison? We can maybe translate the title. So one thing you should know is that these poems usually did not have titles, in fact. So the first lines, you must have noticed so far that the first lines of these poems are actually, have actually become the titles. So cruel prison, how could betide? Alas, as proud Windsor, where I in lust and joy with a king's son, my childish years did pass in greater feast than Priam's sons in Troy. Okay, so this poem is about a real life experience, actually. So Henry Howard is in prison in this poem. And he wrote this poem after he was released, of course. So he is just reimagining his suffering in this prison. So he was, Henry Howard was imprisoned because he had struck, he had beaten another courtier in Henry VIII's court. So, and he was locked in Windsor Palace. And funnily, this is the place, the Windsor Palace was in fact where he had spent his childhood and teenage years. So he is now remembering the beautiful times, the good times that he had in the Windsor Palace, as now he is imprisoned there. So, with a king's son, my childish years did pass, he says. So this king's son is Henry Fitzroy. Henry Fitzroy is the king's, Henry VIII's illegitimate child, illegitimate son. As you know, the problem with Henry VIII was that he did not have a son, and so that's why he married so many times. So this boy's name was Henry Fitzroy. So you notice that he had a son, in fact, but he was an illegitimate son. So he was from a servant woman, probably. and that's why, because he was illegitimate, he could not be an heir to the throne. So this is the boy, I mean the king's son, is one of Henry Howard's childhood friends. So they were locked up together in this prison. With the king's son, my childish years did pass in greater feast than Priam's sons in Troy. So Priam was mentioned in Homer's Iliad, and he was a king, and he had many sons. And the thing about his sons in the Iliad was that they were very rich, and they had very long and wealthy. I mean, they had great feasts together. Okay, so he remembers that he was with Henry Fitzroy, and he spent his childhood with him in great feasts, just like Priam's sons in Troy, where each sweet place returns a taste full sour. The large green courts where we were wont to hove, with eyes cast up unto the maiden's tower, and easy sighs such as folk draw in love. Okay, so what he is talking about here is that every place in the Windsor Palace is kind of creating a bittersweet taste in his mind, because this is the place where he had so much good memories as a child and as a teenager, but at the same time, right now he's imprisoned in the same place. So that's why it has a sour taste. It has a bittersweet taste for him. And he remembers the large green courts, large green gardens, where they used to linger, where they used to spend time. And they were looking up into the maiden's tower. So this is probably, I mean, I'm not sure, but this is probably where there were a lot of young ladies, maybe lady servants. So they were just observing the women's towers, their sleeping place, maybe, and with easy sighs, such as folk draw in love. The stately sails, the ladies bright of hue, the dances short, long tales of great delight, with words and looks that tigers could but rue, where each of us did plead the other's right. So here in this stanza, Henry Howard is again remembering the good memories that he had in Windsor Palace. He's remembering the beautiful halls, I mean the magnificent halls, the magnificent corridors in the palace, and in those corridors, in those halls, there were many ladies that he saw with colorful clothing. They danced together, they told tales to each other, and so again, this stanza is all about good memories in the Windsor Palace. The palm play, where despoiled for the game, with dazed eyes, oft we by gleams of love have missed the ball and got sight of our dame to bait her eyes, which kept the leads above. So here he is again remembering the good times with other young courtiers that he had during games, during sports activities. So the palm play here, as our side note explains, it means handball, a type of game. I'm not sure if that's the handball game that we have now in modern times, but it was called palm play. So they were despoiled for the game. They were stripped. They had taken off their clothing for the game, to change their clothing, and with dazed eyes, oft we by gleams of love have missed the ball and got sight of our dame. So when they see during the game, when they see a beautiful woman, so there were spectators who were watching those matches, and when they saw a beautiful woman among the spectators, they missed the ball. The players, Henry Howard and his friends, they missed the balls because they are distracted by the beauty of those women. To bait her eyes, which kept the lads above. The gravelled ground, with sleeves tied on the helm, on foaming horse, with swords and friendly hearts, with cheer as though the one should overwhelm where we have fought, and chase it oft with darts. So in Henry VIII's court, these horseback activities were very much in common. These competitions where two knights got on the horse and they rode onto each other with long spears. I'm sure you have seen those scenes in some movies. So the gravelled ground with sleeves tied on the helm, and before these matches, before these games, the knights ask for a lady's favor. So the knight approaches a lady among the spectators, and he asks for a favor from the lady, which means that the lady gives a piece of her clothing, such as a hair ribbon, for example, to the knight. And then the knight gets on his horse, he takes his spear, and the two knights just charge on each other and try to topple the other rider with their spears. On a foaming horse, with swords and friendly hearts, with cheer as though the one should overwhelm where we have fought, and chase it oft with darts. With silver drops the meads yet spread for ruth, in active games of nimbleness and strength, where we did strain, trailed by swarms of youths, our tender limbs that yet shot up in length. So again, the same, I'm not going to try to explain everything here in each stanza, but again, he is just remembering the beauty of the beauty of his days of youth. The secret grows, which oft we made resound, of pleasant plaint and of Our Lady's praise, recording soft what grace each one had found, what hope of speed, what dread of long delays. So imagine a scene where you are with your friends together, for example, like 3 or 4 young men just having a friendly chat together, or 3 or 4 women having a friendly chat. But here in this case, Henry Howard is remembering his own case where he was together with his friends in secret groves, so an opening in a forest, okay? So this is a secret place, this is a faraway place where no one can find them. So he's there with his friends, 3 or 4 friends, and they're talking about of pleasant plaint. Plaint here means complaint. I mean, by complaint, Surrey means, Earl of Surrey tries to say that they were talking about the problems that they had, their complaints about life, and of their ladies' praise. So maybe they are having a crush with one of those ladies, maybe they're in love with one of those women, and they are talking about their love interests, recording soft what grace each one had found. So maybe one of those women has smiled at one of them, or one of those women had given a small gift for one of them, and this is called a grace, a favor. Okay, so these young men are talking about those women that they are in love with. The wild forest, the clothed halls with green, with reins availed and swift ibreted horse, with cry of hounds and merry blasts between, where we did chase the fearful heart a force. So this is a hunting scene that he is talking about, a happy time where they were hunting together, these men. The void walls, eke, that harbored us each night, wherewith, alas, revive within my breast the sweet accord, such sleeps as yet delight, the pleasant dreams, the quiet bed of rest. So imagine a dormitory, for example, or a multi-people room where these young men slept. So everybody is gone, it's night, it's dark, and they're sleeping in the same room, and they're just talking to each other. The secret thoughts imparted with such trust, the wanton talk, the diverse change of play, the friendship sworn, each promise kept so just, wherewith we passed the winter nights away. So what were these people, men talking, young men talking about in those times? They were talking about, they were giving each other secrets, the secret thoughts imparted with such trust. So they trust each other, and they give each other the secret thoughts, the wanton talk, the playful talk, that maybe they are making some jokes, some dirty jokes towards each other, the diverse change of play, the friendship sworn, each promise kept so just, wherewith we passed the winter nights away. So these last 4 stanzas might be considered the volta part, maybe, of the poem, these 4 last stanzas. And with this thought, the blood forsakes my face. Now, all of these previous stanzas, they talked about the past memories, the happy days, the happy memories. But now he suddenly realized, the speaker suddenly realizes that he is in prison. So all those beautiful days are over. And with this thought, the blood forsakes my face. The blood leaves my face. I'm suddenly pale and cold. The tears bewray my cheeks of deadly hue. So he cries so much. The which, as soon as sobbing sighs, alas, unsupped have, thus I my plaint renew. I renew my complaint. I complain again as soon as I realize that I'm no longer young and I'm no longer happy, and that I'm now a prisoner. O place of bliss, renewer of my woes. So this is the Windsor Palace that he is in. So it's both a place of bliss, a place of happiness for him, and also it's a place which renews his woes, which makes him remember his sadness. Give me a compt. Where is my noble fair? Whom in thy walls thou didst each night enclose? To other leave, but unto me most dear. So give me a compt. It means give me an account. So just tell me where my noble friend is. So this noble friend is Henry Fitzroy. So he has died just 1 year, as you can see in the footnote. Henry Fitzroy had died the year before, aged 17. So he's talking to the Windsor Palace. Just tell me where my noble friend is, whom in thy walls thou didst each night enclose, to other leave, but unto me most dear. Each stone, alas, that doth my sorrow rue, returns thereto a hollow sound of plaint. Thus I alone, where all my freedom grew, in prison pine with bondage and restraint. So each stone refers to the stones of the prison room, of the prison cell. Each stone, alas, that doth my sorrow rue. I'm so sad that even the stones of this prison cell pity me. because they hear the empty sound of my complaints, of my sadness, and no one hears them, but only the stones hear them. Thus I alone, where all my freedom grew, in prison pine with bondage and restraint. And with remembrance of the greater grief, to banish the less, I find my chief relief. So the greater grief that he refers to is the death of his friend. So to banish the less actually means his own imprisonment. So when I remember, and with remembrance of the greater grief, when I remember about my friend's death, in order to forget about the lesser grief, the smaller grief, which is that I'm imprisoned, I find my chief relief. So when I think about my friend's death, I no longer feel so bad about being in prison, because I have a greater problem than being imprisoned. And that problem is that I have lost my friend. So I feel myself just a little bit relieved when I think about his death. Okay, so that was Henry Howard. So he's just like Sir Thomas Wyatt, one of the pioneers of the English sonnet. These two men were the ones who brought the sonnet form into England from Italy by usually, I mean, not completely, but usually translating the sonnets of Petrarch, of Italian sonneteer Petrarch. So if you have any questions about any of those sonnets, just send me an email and I will try to reply them as soon as possible. Okay, so let's see you in next week's assignment.